speakers today, Wit and Rose. Okay, now I'm gonna give the stage for our two lovely speakers today. ขอบคุณค่ะ
ขอบคุณค่ะ Okay, thank you, Paul. Nice to meet you too. Okay. First question before I start, I think I should be able to share my screen, right? Do I have permission? I do. Cool. So let me just set up real quick. Sorry, one moment, guys. Okay, so just let us give a little bit more brief introduction. So I'm Rose. I'm a UX UI designer here in the Bangkok office. I'm currently in the MLWiz project. So my MLWiz team, I think some of them are here. Thanks for supporting. And then Wit, introduce yourself.
Okay, should I move? Okay, I'll go to mine.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Wit. I'm the UX UI designer here in Thailand as well. So I'm working on with the White project, the Dream Robot, and both of us, me and Rose, we made the website, the NFQ website. So we are building this thing together since the beginning. So yeah, please continue.
Okay, thank you, Wit. So yeah, I will be mostly talking a lot the first, I guess, 10-15 minutes with this little presentation that we prepared for you. So what this presentation is really for is just really high level overview about UX UI in general, the process, what we do here at NFQ and what we are trying to achieve here at NFQ. Since we're just a really small team in Bangkok, there's only like six of us. So just trying to show, what we are all about anyway. So let me just start with this one. This is a huge misconception a lot of people have about UX UI designers. Everybody thinks we create pretty screens. We don't just create pretty screens. So let me say that again. We don't just create pretty screens. We do a whole lot more than just that. So before I even dive even deeper, I think I just want us to maybe look at some real life examples. So let's just think about, okay, since at NFQ we have a lot of clients, right? And they all come from different industries, and every industry has a lot of competitors within that industry, right? So maybe let's take the music streaming platform industry. I always choose this example for some reason, but yeah, the music streaming platforms industry has a lot of competitors, right? Some of you have Spotify, some of you have Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube Prime, YouTube Premium, maybe Napster. Some of you have that. I don't know if they still exist, but there are a lot of competition in this space, as you know. But maybe think about, okay, why do you like to use one of those online music streaming platforms? Maybe just take a second to think about it. Maybe because you like the design of it, maybe the interface, maybe you probably like what they are serving as your needs, right? So maybe I'll take an example for mine. I love Spotify. Why? Because yes, I do like the colors, one, but two, I think the easy access or the easiness of me to create playlists and share with other people is a huge plus for me. And also I can steal other people's playlists and play for myself or like for people at work as well, right? So I think what I'm trying to say here is it's definitely the experience, how it sets one company apart out of the rest in the competition space. So maybe, for example, again, Spotify, Apple Music probably kind of dominates the music online streaming platforms because really just the experience of it. And I think that's something that we here at NFQ, want to help our clients with, right? And like, we don't have just the technology, but we also can help create experiences for our clients to make them differentiate themselves in their, whatever industry it is. So as I go back to about, what we do as UX UI, just to break it down a little more, UX stands for user experience, UI stands for user interface. So we think about the product, pretty much the whole thing. It's not just about one thing, it's about everything from how do they know about this product? How are they experiencing? What are they doing on the product itself? And how do they, maybe incorporate this product into their life? It's the whole experience, it's the whole thing. So we don't just think about this screen is so beautiful, people are going to use it. No, we don't just think about that. So here's a really really long quote, but I'll try to read it as fast as I can because I think this really sums up kind of what we mean by user experience, right? So no product is an island. A product is more than a product. It is a cohesive, integrated set of experiences. Think through all the stages of a product or service, from initial intentions through final reflections, from first usage to help, service, and maintenance. So things like, call centers, support centers, right? Make them all work together seamlessly. So we think about the whole picture as well. So not just one tiny thing, but how everything would, benefit the user. So we are, as the whole job title says, we are very user-centric and human-centric. So again, some people don't really know what we do for each, so I'll try to break it down. So you can think about, like, I always use this analogy. So think about trying to build a house. We're trying to build a product, but let's just think about trying to build a house. UX, user experience, you can think we're kind of like an architect, right? We think about the blueprint, we think about the skeleton, how will things work, the functionalities. So things we do are like, we do research and analysis, service blueprint, user journey mapping, usability testing. I want to just chime in a little bit. User testing is not the correct term, I would say. Usability testing is the correct one. We're not testing people, we're testing the product or the design. UI on the other side is user interface. So I guess a little bit more like visuals. So if we think about building a house, this role is more about like the interior designer. They think about the color, they think about, okay, like maybe the furniture here and there. So UI, you can think of it, that's kind of the duties that are performed. But here at NFQ, we do both. That's why our title has UX/UI. So we do both and we think about both. And I guess in other companies, if you are bigger companies, I used to be in another agency where these roles could be specialized. You can very much specialize in them. But one thing to keep in mind is that they cannot exist without the other. You have to think about, the whole skeleton, the UX side, and it has to work in parallel or in tandem or together with the UI, making sure that the product is pleasant, delightful, it gives you all that good emotions with what visuals can help bring. I will let you know what we are not responsible for, or no, we are not responsible, we are not specialized in. So things like marketing campaigns, we're not specialized in that. Full-fledged branding. So branding is a whole field, and we could provide MVP branding because most of our clients don't have branding from the start. So we are able to provide that, but anything more than that requires a bit more specialized or specialist. So things like logos, people think logos are so easy, right? You draw like a square or whatever, and you're like, yeah, that's a logo. No, that's not a logo. Logo has a deeper identity with it, and I won't get too far into it. But yeah, we don't specialize in illustrations, photography, gamification, painting, drawing, obviously. But you see the line that I have here, it says incorporate. So we do have to think and incorporate these elements into the product too. So again, like I said, the user experience, UX, UI, we think about how all of these will impact the user, how all of these will impact their experience when they're interacting with the product. We're just saying we're not specialized in this, but we do always have to take into account of these things. Okay, I think this is just, again, we want to kind of summarize like where the opportunity is at NFQ. So NFQ, right, we do take in consideration the viabilities of the business, which I guess our POs and PMs are in this. Feasibility technology, so which is the majority of you guys who are the engineers, developers, right? So we have that. And then we also have the users, the customers, the desirability of the human needs. And NFQ, we see this as an opportunity. So as designers, we want to be able to highlight and bridge the gap between these three together at NFQ. So yeah, we just want to highlight the opportunity here at NFQ and help highlight that and define that. Here's design thinking in a nutshell. I'm sure many of you have seen this diagram, but for those don't, let me just go over again. This kind of design thinking is just a framework. It's not a linear process like this. It really isn't. If you work with any of us 6 designers here at NFQ, we don't go through all of these, but it is just a framework where it really helps to guide us when, what really needs to be solved. So the first thing is the empathizing and discovery. So what this means, like empathizing with our users, the business, discovering what the business problem is, right? This could take a while because we have to be on the same page and really just figuring out like, okay, what do you really need? Defining is the second one. So defining the requirements, defining what the user's needs are. Ideate is the fun part. So we come up with many wireframes or solutions. We prototype sometimes, but we do prototype to help communicate the interaction of how this whole thing will work. And then the last thing, what we try to do is testing. So it could be a lot of kinds of testings, but we just want to make sure that, what we're creating will work. And then it kind of just repeats depending on how many design sprints we want to do or the project itself. So why does this all work? Well, there's three parts to this. So the first one is because we are not the user. All of us here who are helping to create a product in any sort of way, whether you're a developer, engineer, PM, PO, business analyst, even us, we're not the user. We're not using this. So we have to, talk to these users, understand these users. Second thing is quick validation, because it can be very costly. I'm sure NFQ before us or designers came in before. I think NFQ, correct me if I'm wrong, was purely like more develop workshops. So it could be costly if you build something, you throw it out there and it doesn't work. It's really costly, right? For both the client, for you waste time in it. But for design, we can help you to reduce those costs. And the last thing why it works as design is because it's collaborative. Design invites everybody to come and share their vision to achieve a certain goal for the product. So this is where we really help, at NFQ. And this is my last slide. So more definitions, less misunderstandings. So this is also where we play a part at NFQ with our clients or in your teams. You have one of us in your teams. We want to bridge the gap of misunderstanding of what the business wants and what the developers are, can create or thinking. We bridge that gap of understanding, like, hey, this is how it should work, and oh, hey, this is what your users would be, would be helpful to them or beneficial to them. But yeah, that's really the presentation. That was a really high-level overview of what UX UI is and what we're trying to do here as a department. So I think I can give it back to Fol to start the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing. And now we're gonna move to the Q&A session, right? The first question will be, what is good design in general?
Okay, it's Will again. So it's going to be me who take care of this Q&A part. So while Rose is prepare the presentations, I prepare my answer as well, according to the list of the questions that we had before, right?
Yes.
The first question is, sorry, what was that? The good design in general, right?
Yeah.
So this question's by Anonymous. My answer is the good design is a useful, understandable, honest, and long-lasting product. What do I mean by honest and long-lasting? So often we, as the designer, have a lot of requirements to be done. Many websites, many goals for the clients, they are asking us to do something which is like, hey, the goal for the company, as in the marketing team, they want to increase the sales. So please give us the design. So there are a lot of theory about the dark UX, which is quite a lot in the market these days. So the dark UX is actually playing with the user's mind behavior. So we let them do something that is quite tricky to achieve the goals, which is the increase of the sales. So for example, we are giving them the opportunity to skip on buying insurance package on some things, but we are not letting them do that easily. We are trying several ways to let them buy the package, which increase the sales to the company. So the honest and transparency is the part of this idea. And the long lasting, we are not building something for short terms. We are building something for long term for the users. And you cannot understand the good design if you not understand the people. So we have to understand the people first in order to get a good design. Once you know them, once you know what is the need of the users, now you can see if your design is good enough for them or not. That's the answer.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Maybe I will follow your list of questions. Okay, the next question is how long it takes for you guys to make a new 2022 brand guideline for NFQ Asia social channel. Love to see the NFQ Asia branding consistent across channels. So, wow, that was a cute question.
All right. Okay. Thanks for the questions, actually. So it started when we got the requirement from the Vietnam side to build our new website of the NFQ, right? So the first challenge is what we want to do. We didn't know the objective. We just know that we want to rebuild the website, right? Then there's a problem. We went to the original website. Okay. We have plenty of problems according to the UX and UI principle. There's no hierarchy at all. The text is somehow too small and somehow too big. The color is not consistent. So we have to create the foundation of everything. Starting with the colors, what should be the colors? We discuss among the teams, discuss with the stakeholder, Richard, Isabel at that time, Rich, and Lars, actually. So we decided to go with something. We want to be professional. Okay, then we have to be professional with the colors. We have to be professional on some things. But we do fun stuff. We entertaining people. We are the family as the NFQ, right? So it has to be fun plus professional. Then that's the objective. So I would say this phase taking us 6 or 7 months just to define everything before we release the website in the public. But the important part is to understand the objective before you define the brand guideline. We have to ask Lars, we have to ask Rich of like, hey, what do you mean by professional? What do you mean by fun? How do we make people fun? Do we want to get any contact by the potential client or not? Then we have to define the proper brand guideline. This is the dark blue, and this is the mood and tone. And this thing will never be all solid, to be honest. According to these days, the dark blue, the blue color that we are having, this is still the problem between our teams that actually. So the dark blue, we have 4 or 5 colors in total, which we cannot really decide which one is the last one that we had, but we do have the one that you are seeing on this slide is the latest color that we have, and that is already solid in our brand guideline. So short answer, just understand the objective before you're doing something else.
Yes, the answer is understand the objective, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we're gonna move to the next question. Is UX UI art or science? How much of it is art and how much of it is science?
This is
Interesting
really,
one.
yeah, this is really interesting and good questions, because when people think about to design something, when people think about the visual, that's pure art, right? But I would say both user experience and the user interface design is the intersect between both art and science. So how? Let us start with the UX process first. In order to run the UX properly, we have to developing our hypothesis. Once we got the hypothesis or the assumptions, we have to run some experiments to test that hypothesis, if that's true or not. And then we have to measure, we have to interpreting the results to deduce the works and what doesn't work. So those kind of terminologies familiar to you, right? Yes, those are the scientific methods. We have to deal with the charts, we have to deal with the statistics, and those numbers, the percentage, the success rate, the fail rate according to the users. So what field of science that I mentioned? It's the statistic. So we have to deal with a lot of things, which is the null hypothesis, the H0, the alternative hypothesis, the H1 or the HA. And once we got the result, we have to perform some tests, the chi-square test and the t-test. And once we got the test result, we have to looking for the significance level with the p-value, which is the probability value. With those combined, it gives us the result of the fact what is wrong with the design, what is wrong with the users, if this thing is going to success or not. If we have that proof as in a number, it means that if the client wants to pay for the development cost, we have the result for you that these things work really well. You don't have to pay more. You don't have to like paying more on the resources, the development resources, marketing research resources, because we have this already for you. So the client can almost assure that this result is more likely to be success, to be implemented. So what about the user interface? The user interface, when it comes to the science, it has something related to the front end level. So the UI, the visual, when we are designing the screen, we have to do with the pixels. We have something to do with the grid system, which is all the interface. We have to look into what is the library that the front end is using, what the engineer is using. We have to deal with the tables. We have to do with the default bootstrap and adjust them based on the requirements to see how things work in the real user interface design. So what about art? What can be about art in terms of the UX and UI? So when we are designing something, when we come up with a visual, that's the color theory. If the client say, hey, this button is, when you click on this thing, it means success. But I label that buttons in red. Is that success? We don't know. Maybe it's error or something. So that comes to the color theory, which is learnable, and we have to study more about that things. And the layouting of the design, we have to really clearly specify on how things lay out according to the screen. So when those things combine, then we got the real UI as the art that we made. So that's the answer for this.
Yeah. Thank you for your answer. And the next question, can you measure ROI from UX and how?
All right, so by Anonymous, the answer is yes, and this is really important in terms of the client, because normally in general, when the clients, typical clients, they want to save money, they want to save costs on the resource. The UX UI department will almost be the first department that will be cut, because we don't have clearly tangible investment, the return of the investment. We don't have the numbers. So, however, there's a studies that when the UX done right, the investment return rate can rise up to 301%. That's a lot, right? And it reduced the development times of the project from 33 to 50%. So that's the real fact that been studied for a while. So how do we measure the ROI of the launch product? So we are using some indicators that indicate a good ROI. The first bullet point is the conversion rate. This is the goal for almost every client. When we are speaking about the conversions, what is that? For example, I ask you to buy some mobile phones in this website. You're starting to create the account. You're starting to choose your mobile phone. You are selecting your credit card and you click checkout. When you're success from the beginning till the end, that's the conversions. Every client looking for that. They're looking for sales. They're looking for something that is triggered by the users to make it successful. We're calling that the conversions. And the second point is reduce number of complaint tickets. Customer support issue, they always got a feedback. Hey, this thing doesn't work. Hey, I cannot find the contact form on your website. So we can assure that if that things happen, we can fix that based on the user's need. If they're looking for the contact form, we have to look back into the website of where is that hidden, or the users complain this because they really have these issues or not. We have to prove that. The third bullet point is reduce time to complete task. What is the time to complete task? Same example, I'm asking you to buy a mobile phone. You probably spend 5 minutes because this website, the flow is really easy to use. You see the mobile phone, obviously, you click on checkout, that's all done. That's really fast. Somehow, some users, they are spending too much time. They are looking for the mobile phones, but they want to see the vouchers. They want to apply the discount, and they couldn't find a discount. They have to go around in the website saying, where's my discount code? Do I have to check the email? So that spent a lot of time, and that could probably lead to the dropout rates where the user is go out from the platform and never come back again, which is really scary in terms of the usability problem. The fourth bullet point is that the reductions of the user error. What's the user error? This often happens during the signing up process. The user doesn't want to subscribe to the newsletter, just for example, but there's a lot of checkbox when we're signing up on something, and we probably miss something, accidentally check on something that we don't want to, that leads to the error, the user's error, that they have something that they didn't expect to have. The final bullet point is reductions of the dropout rate. That is scary as well. We have the conversion rates where people doing things successfully when we ask them to do something, but the dropout rate is something opposite. They're coming to our website and they just exit immediately. We don't know where they go. We don't know how and why they have to go. So it means that we lose already ourselves. Imagine there's thousands of people in the website and that the dropout rate is like increasing every time. That's a problem to the company for sure. So how do we tell this number? How do we know these numbers? According to Rose's presentations earlier, in the design thinking, the last step is the prototype and testing. We have to test that out to the users before we're going to the development process, right? We're going out to ask the user, hey, if these things work, we're giving them a task. Hey, can you please buy a mobile phone for me with this design? And done, we got the result. This thing works, this thing doesn't work. And eventually, if the client have the web analytics, in the web analytics, those includes the numbers for us. It's not for just the marketer, but it's for the UX designer as well to understand what is the real problem of your website. Are those like really hard to use? Are those like have any issues related to the users? Something like that. So that's the answer for this question.
Thank you, Wood. Maybe all of us now can imagine to measure ROI from UX and the way you do it. And the next question is from Jem again. What is the most crucial part of your design process?
What is the most crucial part from GAM? Okay, so based on the framework, the famous framework that we are using, the design thinking again. Personally, I would say the first part is the most important, where we emphasize and discover. What do we mean by emphasize? We are not speaking just to the users. We have to speak with the business as well. Why? Easy questions, business hold money. They are paying us to do something, right? we have to understand what is the need first. We have to understand what is the goal, what is the objective of hiring us to do something. Once we understand that things, we have to go to the users. Okay, do you have this problem? Can you try this out for me? Many methods can be applied, the survey, the interview, the focus group, anything. Those are the UX tools that we can have. And not just the users, not just the business, we have to consider about the team as well. The developers, we have to have really much empathy on the whole team, the project manager who runs the agile. We have to create the best design according to the timeline that we're having. We cannot go with the cool design, the fancy design, the best UX ever, but the team cannot really implement that because there's a limited resource. We have to discover what is the limitations according to the change. We have to know the limitation of our change as well. So there are many tools that we can apply to this. So I would say the crucial part of the UX UI design is this area. That's it for this answer.
Yes. And now we're gonna move to the next question. What makes a good UX designer?
What makes a good UX designer? From Anonymous. So there are 3 bullet points that I came up with. The first thing is non-bias. What do we mean? So non-bias, when we are talking to every people, when we are talking to the business team, when we are talking to the users, we are all having our opinions. So when we are having that feeling, that probably cause some bias, we are shut down our hearing, but we are like, we don't listen to the users anymore. We don't listen to the business owner anymore because we have our opinions, and that is not good at all. We have to be non-biased to everything, which means we have to be really open-minded to the feedback. When we go to the users, we ask them to finish something according to other tasks, like the usability testing, where we test out something with the users. When they give us the feedback, that is really value to us because that feedback is the fact, that is the truth from the users, and we want to believe that. But we cannot believe that right away. It requires a lot of samples, at least 7 or 8 samples if we are like in face-to-face to collect the answers. But if we are speaking about the quantitative research, which is more the number or the statistics that I just mentioned, that requires more than hundreds of samples where we send out our research and we have to do with some hypothesis and just a proof of the result. And the last bullet point is the empathy. Like I said, it requires understanding among every parties, the teams, internal teams, the users, the business, the stakeholder, everyone. We have to understand their own limitations, their own needs, and the goal and the objective that drive the team moving forward. That's the answer.
Thank you, Will. Thank you for your answer. And now we're gonna have another question. What is good design in general?
Good design in general.
We answered this before.
Right.
Yeah. What is lean UX?
So the lean UX.
Yeah, the lean UX.
Right. So this is quite interesting questions because this term, the lean UX, is frequently used these days because the design thinking that was just presented that consumed too much time in the agile. When the project manager asking us to do something, when we got the little Jira tickets, how do we fit that into the design thinking? We have to like do a lot of validation, something like that, right? And that consumes a lot of time. So lean UX comes to solve that things. Basically, the lean UX is cutting out the steps, but cutting out doesn't mean that it's the best thing to do, but it's all repeated. When we got the Jira ticket, we think about the things, we do a quick research, we do test the result from the previous task, we asking someone to help us the co-design with the stakeholder. And then we quickly jump into the prototype, the design, the wireframe, the hypothesis of this idea, of this Jira ticket. And then we just check the design, if we are going to the right directions or not. Who's going to answer that? It's the client, it's the stakeholder, it's our team. So if anything goes wrong, we can just go back to the thing we make and we check. It's all repeated until everything is all right. The client say, okay, this is the sign off. This thing works well. So I really want this to be implemented. Then we send that out to the developers. So this can be implemented. So this process is quite quick and fast and important for the MVP project specifically. But if we have a lot of time, if we have more time, if the client is big corporate and want to fix some certain points of their platforms, then I would recommend to go with the design thinking first, because the design thinking is more details to the problems, more details to the solutions, and more details to the testing part, where we can have the exact full 100% accurate answer from the users. That's what lean UX means in this kind of situations.
Yes, maybe we have a clear vision about lean UX. We have more questions on Slido. So what is the most common controversy between a UX UI designer and the web developer? And how did you guys solve it?
Let me think of that. Now it's time to improvise. Okay.
Okay.
I think I can think of one actually. So when we are doing the UI work, where we have to communicate with the developers, right? The grid system is really hard to define. We want something to be nice to, as in the mobile phone, and nice to be on the desktop side. But when we drag the corner of the desktop to the smaller size, then something breaks, right? So the grid system is kind of essential to be aligned with the developers, which means it somehow must be custom. So we cannot go with the default coding from the Bootstrap at all. If we want something to be really specific, then we have to custom that. So there always the argument between us and the developers. And how do we solve that? Like I said, we have to be more empathized on the limitations of the developers. If they say, okay, this is really hard, okay, then they cannot really implement this within this time frames. So we have to understand that and find another solution to be implemented, something like that. So they're always a middle of everything. We have to be careful and really understand their side as well.
Yes.
Yes, I think Miss Thủy is know the answer right now. Okay, the next question is, if I want to learn about UX UI, what should I learn first?
What should I learn first? What do you think?
My past experience, my background wasn't the UX UI before. I was the art director, don't know about the UX UI, don't know about the technologies at all. So I start learning on the problems. I want to know how people solve problems. So the UX isn't mean the tech always, right? It's about the problems that you are having on the daily. I read the book called Everyday Design Things.
The design of everyday
Design of everyday thing.
Don
Okay, I'm
Norman.
sorry. By Don Norman. He's mentioned about the products that is made for people, but the people use that in a wrong way, like a push and pull door, something like that.
Yeah.
So it started to think that, hey, this is a problem, but no one fixed that. So that leads to the UX. So if you want to start just for fun, just thinking about the problems that you are having every day, which has some impact to you, and trying to solve that problem by yourself.
Yeah.
Something like that. And if you want to know more about the tools or like how we think about that more in details, there's a simple thing that we can look at, like the customer, the user journey, where it starts, where it ends, what happens in between. The user persona, who is the target audience, if you can define that things, that's a good, really good start of the UX and the UI.
Let me jump in here real quick, Whit. So
Okay.
for anyone who actually wants to learn something about UX UI, we do have some courses that we can put you guys through. So if you actually have that interest, come talk to me about it, and we can actually onboard you to something where you can get a cursory overview. So for a lot of developers, I think it's a useful thing to know anyway, because I think to be more user oriented and product centric is a useful tool for all of us going forward, because I think it ends up serving the customer no matter what position you're in this company. So yeah, come talk to me if you want to learn more. Yeah.
I think
Yes.
sorry, can I add one more thing? So maybe between UX and UI, in my experience, I think learning UX first is more important. And then if you're really that interested in how they go together, then you learn UI after that. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for your sharing with us about this question. And the next one, is it important for a UX UI designer to understand well backend and front-end development?
I want to answer this one.
Ross want to answer
Yeah.
this one.
Yeah. Okay,
Yes,
okay.
your turn, Rose.
Just because I'm I think maybe the only one so far in this department that took the really basic HTML, CSS courses. So a lot of people think you don't have to know, which is somewhat true, but I think if you at least understand the basics foundation for front end things like HTML, CSS, so everything that we kept saying about grid system or bootstraps and stuff, I think it helps you to, one, when we're designing on Figma, we can hand off the documents to the front ends a little bit easier, because if we use the same language, right, like, or this is the box model and these are the paddings and margins, it really helps to communicate with each other. In terms of backend, I would say just at least know the technical constraints. If you know and understand the technical constraints with your developers, it helps you to kind of pivot your design to be both feasible and feasible and desirable for the users. So yeah.
I would like to add to this one also a little bit. I absolutely agree. And I would go one further and say that in the modern day, it is quite essential for designers to actually understand the technology that we're designing around. I think even something like how data gets requested or shown or rendered in the front end, from the back end, APIs, things like this, it is important to know that kind of like handshake between the front and the back, so that we can even optimize the design to make it load faster, right? So there's less waiting, or some kind of interim to fill in the gaps when we're waiting for the things to come. Like, we do need to actually understand the technology behind it just to actually create the best experience. So this is why I think in our department, we definitely push quite hard in understanding responsive and grids, like Whit mentioned, to a higher level, so that we're not speaking ignorantly about these things when we come to do it. I think the days of not needing to know are over. We really do need to know. So yeah, I guess that's my answer for that.
Yeah, thank you so much. So it's like the foundation for the UX UI designer, right? The next question is, a software engineer, what should be the first thing for me to master to become a UX UI designer?
Okay. If you are the software engineer really, which means you have the foundations of the coding, how you're supposed to build something, right? That is a lot easier for your career path to continue with the UX UI, because what you have to do next is just to understand the user's needs and how to solve that things. If we give this as a title of like, hey, you know how to build this, but do you know why you have to build this? If you can answer that, then it's a good direction to be the UX UI designer as well. with the best foundations of the software engineer. So like I told you, empathy is always important. Ask yourself why you have to do this to the users, why the users need this, why the client requires this from us. So it doesn't matter where you're coming from. Everyone can be the UX UI designers if you're going to the right directions. Understanding, creating, answering questions, why, how, just like that. So there are a lot of tools that we can use on each phase. The design thinking is part of that. But if you notice, the design thinking is not the framework that only the UX UI designers is using, right? So many people can use this, the project manager, the sales, everyone can use this. But we are using that for some specific purpose, just to understanding. That is the main purpose of being the UX UI designers.
I mean, in fact, design thinking really came from a foundation of just thinking about products, right? And processes. It's not really even necessarily specified for UX UI, right? So design thinking in general is a good way for us to validate why we're doing what we're doing instead of just doing what we're doing. So I would say that design thinking is a general rule for everyone to keep in their minds as they're doing their thing, so that we are actually questioning, why we're doing what we're doing. It's very important. Beyond UX UI, right, for everyone.
Yes, why we're doing and why we're doing. And the next question for Wes, should the designer have to know about front-end coding? Is that the last question, right?
The front-end coding, right?
The front-end coding.
That's like what Ross said, and it's important. Let's say it's a good thing to know. It helps everything easier. It helps you like understanding what the team is doing. It helps that understanding code is working in a certain way. And one thing that I know from this is that it helps us knowing the limitations of the front end code. Okay, we cannot do much fancy stuff. We have to still in a frame of the coding. We cannot like go much beyond with the creativity, making the rotating buttons, something like that. But it depends. It depends on the designers as well. Right now, Rose has experience, like she said that she learned the front end stuff as well, and that benefits her a lot when she's making like the B2B product where it deals a lot of the tables and the responsiveness, something like that.
Yeah. But the only thing I have to say about, oh my God, where do I look? Okay, I only have to say about knowing too much on both sides, like coding and design, a little bit is just that when we think too much about technical constraint, it actually limits our creativity. So I think we just have to balance it for sure. But if you've been in workshops with any of us, workshops where we're always like, don't think about technical constraints, the sky's the limit, right? So, I mean, do we have to know about it? I think it's good to know. I think it makes collaborating with developers easier. So I think in our company, right? Us designers with developers, we have to like work really well together. So it helps to bridge that gap a little bit. But I would say like if you know too much, if we focus too much on front end, knowing too much about front end coding or back end coding, it will limit our innovation. So that's the only thing. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your answer, Rose. And the last but not least, very interesting one. The questions for you with how old are you?
Okay.
You don't have to answer, just say.
Okay,
You don't
so
have to answer very personal.
my age is I'm 32.
Wow, 32.
No, I'm
You guys
kidding.
want to take a crack at guessing how old he is, maybe?
Oh, you already flipped the answer.
No, I just leave the answer. I'm 25.
Oh, 25, that makes sense. Okay, I think that is the last questions for today, right? So thank you so much. So I'm gonna wrap up our session today. if you guys have any questions or something you want to know more about UX UI, you can ping the two speakers on Slack after the talk. And again, I want to thank you you guys so much for your time and your effort for the sharing today, especially the UX UI team in Bangkok. ขอบคุณค่ะ Thank you so much for your preparation and wonderful presentation, so that we can have a very interesting and helpful session.
Excuse me.
you guys,
Yes.
Excuse me.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would like to ask that will the Bangkok team create to set up a class to take to training for the NFQ employee about the UX UI,
Okay.
or we
Yeah.
do some workshop to have most practice about the UX UI example for the design sprint, for to do
Yeah.
the research user, or to do the journey customer map. So
Yeah, of
will
course. I
we
mean,
have that?
if there's interest in, if there's enough interest in the company, for sure, we can organize something like that where we can get some of you guys on board and yeah, have some sessions where we can share more knowledge. So we do actually do something like that internally already. So we can extend this out to the wider company if you're interested. So yeah, let us make some plans to make that happen. Yeah.
Yes, I think we will have that in the future, right?
Sure. I mean, now now we've been called out in public, so we have to, right?
Yeah. But you guys, please wait a second. The community team will send you a feedback survey. It should take you 5 minutes to fill in the form to have us to prepare for the next event. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. ขอบคุณ
Okay.
ค่ะ
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and bye bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.
Bye.